When a medical emergency occurs, a loss of just a few seconds could mean life or death. EMTs and paramedics respond to emergency calls, performing medical services and transporting patients to medical facilities. In this video, we're going to help you answer the question, should you become an EMT or paramedic in 2020? We will cover salaries, what an EMT or paramedic is, the job market, and the latest trends. Coming up. Hey guys and girls, Stephen Hack here with CareerWatch, where we help you with your career search. If you end up liking the video, hit that thumbs up to support the channel. Also, I offer consulting services, more information in the description below. So what is an EMT? EMT stands for Emergency Medical Technician. There are different types of EMTs. An EMT Basic cares for patients at the scene of the accident and on the way to the hospital. An EMT Intermediate, also known as an Advanced EMT, can do anything an EMT Basic can do. Plus, they can administer intravenous fluids and some medications. And then we get to paramedics. Paramedics are the most trained. They can do everything both types of EMTs can do. They can also give medications orally and intravenously. They can also interpret electrocardiograms or EKGs and use other monitors and complex equipment. Kind of like firefighters, many EMTs and paramedics are unpaid volunteers. I couldn't find a breakdown of how many EMTs and paramedics are employed versus volunteers, but I do know for firefighters, 2/3 of firefighters are volunteers. So there might be something similar with EMTs and paramedics. I actually do have a video on firefighters. Feel free to check it out by clicking the link in the top right-hand corner. So let's get on to the pay. How much do paramedics and EMTs tend to earn? This data is straight from the government and doesn't include EMTs and paramedics that are volunteers. It also, unfortunately, doesn't break out EMTs and paramedics as two separate groups. They kind of just average them together. Paramedics tend to have a higher base pay. We'll get into this a little later in the video. In 1909, the Bureau of Labor Statistics recorded the average base salary as $23,280. By 2019, they recorded the average base salary at $38,830. So this is about a $16,000 increase from 1999 to 2019. And also these are base salaries. They don't get into overtime, which we'll talk about a little later in the video. So year over year, the average yearly wage growth for paramedics and EMTs averaged together has been around $800. So we can estimate that the average pay in 2020, the average base salary in 2020 would be around $40,000 across the country. Using the government statistics, this is kind of how the pay breaks down. Unfortunately, again, the government doesn't separate paramedics and EMTs. They throw everything into one category. Starting salary for paramedics and EMTs would be anywhere between $23,000 and up to around $28,000. And the top 10% of EMTs and paramedics earn more than $60,000 per year as a base salary. I found it pretty challenging to find the difference in pay between EMTs and paramedics. One article stated that the difference would be anywhere between $7,000 and $19,000 between EMTs and paramedics. But this does ignore one huge way that paramedics and EMTs can really boost their income, and this is overtime. It depends on the state, but most employed paramedics and EMTs are eligible for overtime. And there's some crazy stories of EMTs and paramedics making some crazy amount of money through overtime. In 2016, Sergeant Gwendolyn McHugh from Cleveland, Ohio, doubled her salary by working overtime nearly every weekday and every weekend in 2015. Gwendolyn would oversee recruitment and training, and her base salary was about $52,000 per year. With overtime, she earned over $100,000 in 2016. In Baltimore, Maryland in 2015, it was reported that some EMTs and paramedics took home more than Baltimore's mayor. A few of them earned more than $200,000 in 1 year. And this income was legitimate because there was some severe staff shortages in Baltimore, Maryland in that year. Another thing to consider regarding pay is the region of the country that you live in. Certain regions tend to pay paramedics and EMTs a lot more than others. According to the government, these states pay paramedics and EMTs the most amount of money in 2019. Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, has an average base salary of around $48,000 per year. Alaska, the state known as the last frontier, has an average base salary at $51,000 per year. Maryland, also known as the Free State, around $51,000. The state of Washington, the Evergreen State, around $56,000. And the highest paying state for paramedics and EMTs by base salary is the state of Hawaii, the Aloha state, with the average base salary at around $57,000 per year. So we covered the incomes of EMTs and paramedics. But before we go any further, I do want to provide one little warning about going into this occupation. EMTs and paramedics get injured all the time. They have one of the highest rates of injuries and illnesses among all occupations. Here's a breakdown of the injuries between 2010 and 2014. Many had injuries related to body motion, exposures, slips, trips, falls, motor vehicle accidents, and assaults. Regarding assaults, many patients can become combative at an emergency scene. Exposures relates to illnesses, being exposed to sick people. One recent concern is the current pandemic that is ravaging the US right now. Many paramedics, EMTs, firefighters, police officers have been getting sick with the virus all across the country. So definitely keep in mind those risks before entering this occupation. The next question is, how do you become an EMT or paramedic? Do you need a college degree? Do you need an associate's degree? Do you need a master's degree? What kind of education is typically required? In 2017, the Bureau of Labor Statistics did a survey of the education of EMTs and paramedics, and this is what they found. They found that 13% had a high school diploma or equivalent, 43% had some college, 23% had an associate's degree, 17% had a bachelor's degree, and 3% had a master's degree among EMTs and paramedics. So the big takeaway for this is you do not need a bachelor's degree to become an EMT or a paramedic. The base requirement is typically just a high school diploma. But depending on the state, many paramedics are actually required to have at least an associate's degree, and this depends on the state. Programs in emergency medical technology are offered by technical institutes and community colleges. To become an EMT or paramedic, you need to enroll in one of these programs. The cool part is many of these programs are vastly more affordable than heading off to college and getting a degree. The other great part about this occupation is that it is growing. The government is predicting that the number of jobs will rise by 7% over the next 10 years. One reason for this is that we live in an aging society and the average age is increasing all across America. More and more EMTs and paramedics are going to be needed to respond to age-related emergencies. So this is absolutely a growing occupation. Just like every other occupation, becoming an EMT or a paramedic has its pros and cons. It is not for everyone. A huge part of the workforce is unpaid volunteers. People that are attracted to this kind of occupation tend to be adrenaline junkies. If you hate the idea of spending 40 to 50 hours behind a computer screen where every day is similar to the next, you might like this occupation. Every emergency is a little different. But definitely understand the risks before jumping in. There is a high probability that you could get injured or you could get sick from someone at the emergency scene. Definitely do your own research before jumping into this occupation. Are you interested in becoming an EMT or paramedic in 2020? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching the video, and if you want me to cover a certain occupation, also let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.